Hey there, my name is Michelle and I'm hosting a little video series about rhetoric and musicals. So the musicals that I will be analyzing are Six the Musical and Hamilton, an American Musical. And I'll be using the three rhetorical theories of Kenneth Burke's symbolism, the feminist rhetorical theory, and of the romantic revolt to get a better understanding of how media can be analyzed to show the different values and beliefs of a certain country or audience and put that into the greater context of the rest of the world. So to start us off, let's summarize the musicals. So Six is a British musical written by Toby Marlowe and Lucy Moss. Marlowe was inspired to write a story about the wives of Henry VIII after reading Antonia Fraser's The Wives of Henry VIII. And it first debuted in 2017 at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. And the cast only consisted of female and non-binary classmates, so the other attendees of Cambridge. And today it's performed on Broadway. So it kind of like really quickly went on to Broadway. It got really popular. It sold out on its second night, which I thought was really cool. So the premise of Six is a pop concert performed by a band made up of the wives of Henry VIII. And the goal of the concert is to prove which wife had it worse when being married to Henry. It goes in order of marriage, so it starts off with Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, Anna of Cleves, Catherine Howard, and then Catherine Parr. And the solos kind of go a little bit deeper into each woman as a person rather than just being a wife. And that's interesting because it isn't typically done in history. You kind of just hear about the wives through like that little rhyme, divorced, beheaded, died, and divorced, beheaded, survived. And in Catherine Parr's solo, it's revealed that the competition that they set up is really just a ruse to show how wrong it is to intertwine women in history so tightly to their spouse, even if their spouse was not memorable or remarkable in any way. They bring up how Henry, what did he do? I don't know, he had 6 wives. So that's the thing that made him was his wives, which they kind of bring up about how, well, we're as important as he is, why is he getting more coverage? So then Hamilton, I know this one's pretty popular, so a lot of people probably already know what this one's about, but it is officially titled Hamilton, an American Musical, and it is written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who was inspired to write a musical about Alexander Hamilton after reading a biography by Ron Chernow about Hamilton. Before it was on Broadway in 2015, it was at the Vassar College in 2013. And so Hamilton basically just tells a story of Alexander Hamilton from his immigration into New York to his part in the Revolution, and then his life afterwards as a lawyer and a father, and then it covers his scandal with the Reynolds pamphlet, and then his death at his duel. So Lin-Manuel writes this in a rap hip-hop style, which is kind of unique to his writing style, and it's very different from the pop style that we see in Six. So now that we kind of summarize everything, let's look at the rhetorical theories, just give an overview so that it makes sense of what I'm saying for the rest of the videos in the series. So the first rhetorical theory I'll be talking about is Kenneth Burke's theory of symbolism. So the theory of symbolism states that humans are symbolic creatures and that communication is also symbolic. This means that we can use communication and see it as different things other than what it is itself. We can separate it from just being as is. We can use that to moralize, more or less. So we can say, this was done, this was said, it's interpreted XYZ. Well, that's wrong or that's right. So either let's change it or let's continue acting in this manner. And due to this foundation that socializing and just being human is symbolic, it is used a lot to critique society. Like communication and performances are used a lot to critique society. As Craig Smith puts it, the play represents something. It is not itself reality. The drama is the way that humans manage society. So not only does this kind of allow us to get a deeper understanding of ourselves and where we stand, but it's also the reason why we connect so deeply to characters, because I know I for sure have cried when a character died on screen. Burke publishes different organizational forms as well as kind of establishing drama and communication as symbolic. Some of his organization techniques include conventional forms and repetitive forms. So the conventional form is basically just beginning, middle, end, or however a story itself is put into order. So for Hamilton, it's very much birth, death, rebirth. And that is seen through Hamilton. He's kind of born when he immigrates to the US, and then he dies socially after his scandal with the Reynolds pamphlet. And then he kind of dies a little emotionally after his son dies, and then he's reborn by the retellings of his story through the biographies and the musical. And then another conventional form is past, present, future, and that's used more in 6. So 6 analyzes the past, like the lives of Henry VIII, to get an understanding of where we stand now of women in history, so that in the future we can put them in a better light and put them on the same level as the historical male figures that are going to be coming up. And the repetitive form is something that it takes a theme and then it makes it more into a universal truth by repeating it, and each repetition of it gets more information added to it. So in Hamilton, this is Eliza's theme of kind of look at where you are, look at where you started. And it kind of shows at first it's be proud, you're doing great, keep going. And then it kind of slowly goes to, you've gone really far, it should be enough for you, pause. And then the repetitive form in 6 tends to be the repetition of the phrase divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived, and each time that they restate it, it's kind of separating them more and more from that identity. It starts off as this is how you know us, this is all that we are in history, but then it ends up being, this is no longer who we are, you know so much more now. Take that information, run with it, go have fun with it, and look deeper into other women in history. Don't just stop at us. So Burke also highlights the pentad, which is an organization technique as well, and it includes act, agent, agency, scene, and purpose. So the act is the specific dramatics, so exactly what is happening in a scene, and then the agent or the actor in this case is the writers of the musicals, so Toby Marlowe and Lucy Moss, as well as Lin-Manuel Miranda for Hamilton. And then the scene is not only the musical theater at X time, it's also why they made exactly what they made. So what's the thing they're trying to say behind it? What's their backstory? And then the purpose is why are they doing it? Just kind of giving reasoning. So they want to tell a story, they want to share history. And then the agency is the specific manner in which that they do it. So the act is exactly the scene, specific scene playing out, and the agency is oh, that this is a musical production. So for the second rhetorical theory that we have is the feminist rhetorical theory. And feminism aims to include women and elevate them to even out the playing field, not to just make them superior. And it realizes that there are inherent differences between men and women, and it wants to use those differences in order to push women forward and to explain why we have the differences and why it's good to have both sides putting in opinions for one topic. Because if you just have one side going for a topic, you're not really going to get much variation and much change. But if you have two different opinions going into it, it's going to be a better result. So Carol Gillian is a sociologist who noticed that young girls had a tendency to latch onto their mothers, whereas the young boys around the same age tended to try to be more independent. And these different preferences lead her to conclude that a woman is defined by being caring and being able to connect and respond to others, while men are more defined by competitiveness and individual success, which is definitely seen throughout both of the musicals. So two important things to keep in mind is that because of these differences, we have different attitudes towards different things. Like a man and a woman will have varying opinions, and it's natural to have that. And then a woman's writing is not as prominent as a man's writing, so when reading or doing research, the opinion of a female isn't going to be as prominent, and that can be a problem when making decisions because it's very one-sided. So the third and final rhetorical theory is the Romantic Revolt. And the first part of the Romantic Revolt kind of establishes rhetoric as an art form. Like the writer Hugh Blair very much says that it is an art form. And then Thomas de Quincey kind of adds on to that yes, it's art, but the greater art style is the eloquence in which it's delivered, because that delivery very much stays with the person rather than the words said. Because if I were to just like deadpan and say something, you're probably not going to remember it. But if I'm very expressive and, like I'm moving my hands around a lot, kind of like draws attention to what's being said. And then there are also people like Thomas Sheridan and Gilbert Austin who believed that delivery was very important, similar to the eloquence that De Quincey brought out. However, Austin believed that it should be choreographed, kind of like a play or a musical, and that the choreography needs to have a deeper meaning than just like, so that deeper meaning kind of also needs to be spontaneous so that it really draws in the audience and they kind of fully get what you're trying to say. Hugh Blair also established the idea that nationalism is a civic virtue, that it is like a duty to the state that needs to be shown. The Romantic Revolt very much wanted a return to nature, and one of those returns included like natural rights of people. A very important figure of establishing those kind of natural rights were Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who published A Social Contract, which argues that all of men are created equal and that it's the duty of those in power to help those who aren't in power. And those nationalistic ideas allow for an analysis of the values that are going to be shared within the different media. So I know for right now that this is just a lot of information, but just bear with me because it's going to make sense after all the videos are completed. So for this video, I'm good. Just wanted to give you a summary and overviews to just kind of get a deeper understanding of everything else that's going to go on. And in the next video, I will be discussing feminism and how it is reflected in Six and Hamilton and the way that reflection is portrayed to the audience.